So I'm going to have one more question, and that's going to be perception sevens. So how do you suggest people to avoid unhealthy coping mechanisms and search for the root of the cause without coming across as confrontational? So I'm a little bit confused about what you mean by coming across as confrontational, and I assume that what you mean is you're trying to help someone else because I don't understand where the conflict is unless you're trying to tell someone that I think you're relying on an unhealthy coping mechanism and you're not addressing the root cause. So, what I would say is that first, once again, meet them where they're at, right? So if someone is using an unhealthy coping mechanism and not addressing the root of the problem, you have to have them be willing to talk about it. So if we look at my interview with Anna today, Anna at the very end said, this was something that I was not comfortable talking about, and yet I talked about it. So the question is how is it that we can create a conversation where Anna knows that there's something that she's scared to talk about and she's still willing to talk about it? And I think the way that you do that is by being non-judgmental and not forcing them, right? So if let's say someone has a drinking problem and the reason that they're drinking is because they're going through a divorce. And you kind of tell them, hey man, I think you need to go see a therapist and deal with your divorce instead of drinking so much. They're going to come back with a great big screw you, right? So the way that you kind of handle that is you can say start with being really non-judgmental and really open. And if they think that there's a problem with their coping mechanism, start by asking them, hey man, sometimes I wonder if you drink too much. What do you think about that? Is that just me being a little bit judgmental, or, what do you think about your drinking? And you can just be kind of open about that and then see what they say. And if they say, yeah, man, my drinking is completely fine, I don't think it's a fucking problem. So first of all, that clues you in that it is a problem because it seems like it's a sore point. But it also means that they're not ready to talk about it. Right? So then you kind of pause and you say oh, okay, so it sounds like you feel very strongly that your drinking is perfectly fine. So my bad for bringing it up. Is it if I can't shake the idea that I think it's a problem, is it okay if I bring it up with you again? And if you sort of say things in that neutral tone, it's very hard for people to say no. So oftentimes they're yeah, if you really think it's a problem, sure, but it's not a problem. That's the response that you're going to get. And even in that moment, you got a little in because you got permission from them to bring it up again. And then you approach them a month later and then you're hey, so a couple weeks ago, I asked you about drinking and, you said it wasn't a problem, but last week you kind of got blackout drunk and threw up all over your sofa. It's hard for me to think that that's okay. Period. You're not asking a question. You're not asking them to do anything. You're making an observation and period. So this is the other really neat technique you guys need to understand. If you want to talk to someone about something, don't ask questions, because if you ask questions, they feel like they're under attack. What do you think about your drinking? Do you think your drinking is a problem? Do you think maybe you should be drinking less? It's attacking. You're attacking people. Don't attack. Silence plus statement. Statement plus silence, in that order. I noticed that you threw up all over your couch. Period. They're going to say something. They can't tolerate that vacuum or that void. So that's what I'd say. You have to start by sort of talking to them and being open and being non-judgmental, non-confrontational. And so notice that I said nothing about searching for the root, because we're so far from searching from the root. They're not ready yet. You have to first acknowledge that they're using a coping mechanism and that there is something deeper. But unless they're willing to meet you halfway, talking about the deeper problem doesn't matter if they don't think that there's a problem. You're not going to convince them. Yeah, so I'd also agree with other people that if you think that someone has an unhealthy coping mechanism, or you feel like you have an unhealthy coping mechanism, that's a great place to sort of start and think about therapy.